everybody, one and all, and welcome to another exciting, fun-filled, expeditious episode of Radiorama, where I show you how to work on radios, televisions, stereos, record players, mostly anything that runs on vacuum tubes from the 1920s to about the 1960s. And today we have this RCA model, let's see, unknown. No, this is not the original finish. Someone who's clearly better at painting things than I am did a pretty cool custom paint job on this guy. I mean, look at that pinstriping. It looks like automotive paint. Looks like it was done some time ago. I feel like I've worked on this model before. I'm not sure if that's the model number. B2, that doesn't sound like an RCA model number. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tubes. This is just an ordinary 5 tube set. Now that I'm looking at it, I just worked on this same exact chassis 3 days ago. Now the styling of the cabinet's different, but I worked on a radiola and I had an awful lot of problems with it, so I hope this one doesn't give me a lot of problems. I made an idiot out of myself too. Now I don't know if it works or not. I'm going to do exactly what you're not supposed to do and plug it in. Because who knows, it could be someone that didn't know anything about electronics, was like, I just want to paint a radio and have a shelf clean. So let's go ahead and try it out. I'm going to keep my eye and ears open. Okay, we got pilot light, and I see tube filaments. Now I'm prepared to yank this thing off if I hear even a slight buzz. Because if it's not been overhauled, then the electrolytics will be shot, and they'll probably cause AC hum, and it'll possibly damage the set.
Yeah, that might have been a little over the line. I'm gonna strikes. 50 years, EO has been an innovator in youth education, mentorship, and positive peer pressure.
I feel like I've got some dirt in the volume pot.
And I'm on the same sentiment when it comes to...
Sounds like a short. That could be a number of anything. It could be a shorted cap, dirt in the tuning condenser, dirt in the volume control, tube pins that are not properly in contact. Who knows? But it does kind of work, not very well. So the next thing to do is I'm going to carefully remove the chassis. This one's pretty easy. You've got screws on either side, one here and there. And then you take the knobs off and it just pulls out in one piece. And I like this model because it's got a real stiff cardboard antenna frame, because a lot of times they would just make it out of the cheapest, thinnest material. And I like it when it's this thick so I can turn the whole set upside down, the whole chassis upside down when I'm working on it. So let's nab the chassis out of this thing and see what's going on. It's going to be one of three things. A, completely original, unrestored. B, given the old electrolytic job and nothing else, and it could have been done in the past, distant past, or more recent. Or C, it's been completely recapped, and all I'll have to do is do a few checks to see what's going on. Maybe do some updates to the safety and the performance. Okay, well, it is option number 2, which is someone came in and did the bare minimum, and it was a long time ago too. This electrolytic is itself a replacement. You can tell because of the not so great soldering job here. Also, the styling's different, and it's a weird, I was about to say it's a weird brand. No, it's not. It's Cornell. So, I mean, that was definitely a major supplier to these brands. They're still around. But that's probably either a 50s or 60s era capacitor. If you think about it, I believe this set, like its radiola cousin, is from 1946, 47. So it makes sense that by the time you start getting into the 50s and 60s, the original electrolytic, which was probably made to order on the absolute cheapest run, would have given up the ghost. I find that in probably about 75% of these AA5s. Otherwise, everything else is completely original. These are all Good old-fashioned wax caps. It seems like the ends are bulging a little bit. It's not super unusual, but I would not be surprised if one of these is semi or mostly shorted. They just leak. This is the number one most important cap in the whole set. This is the from the AC line to chassis, meaning like if you were to, the way these filament string sets work, like they're old-fashioned Christmas lights. So in order to have a cheaper design and not have a power transformer, you just run 110 volts through all the filaments. And when you look at their tube types, they'll say, well, I'm not sure what they do in other countries, but in the US what they would do is it would start with a number like 12 or 6, 35 or 50 or something like that. And the idea was to have filament voltages that when you got to the end of the line added up to 110 volts. So this probably has a 50L6, a 35Z5, a 12SQ7, a 12SK7, and a 12SA7. So you add all those up mathematically, you're about 110 volts. Hence no need for a power transformer. But the chassis itself becomes one end of the AC. And back then, even they were like, that's really stupid if we were to put the cord directly to that metal box, because someone could lose the knob on the radio, or someone could be barefoot and drunk or something and touch the back of it or something, and they could get the fuck shocked out of them. That's all the juice coming out of the tap. So they put this grounding cap, except that value is 10 times higher than we tend to replace with. We tend to replace these with a 0.01 rated cap. Something else I'm noticing here, I remember there's a weird kind of like motorboning noise, and I'm looking at this. The bottom of the volume pot was touching chassis ground. And that's the easiest way to get some pretty nasty sound effects in your audio. Kind of curious about this volume pot too. I kind of wonder if it's a replacement because we've got this extra leg here. I think that usually indicates that you would have tone control attached to that, and this does certainly not have tone control. I kind of doubt RCA would unnecessarily spend more money unless they just got a deal on a whole bunch of those. I mean, if it's a replacement, whoever replaced it did a great job. These are very clean solders. Yeah, it's probably original. Whatever, I'm just overthinking it. But we need to replace this first and this second. And what do we have here? We have two values, a 50 and a 30 microfarads rated at 150 volts. Red and blue are your positive. Well, red and blue are your positives, and of course negative is your black. On this other side that goes here, like little dried up bug carcasses in there. We'll also need to replace this cord because it looks like it's the original cord, and even though it's actually still pretty rubbery, when I bend it real hard like that, it starts cracking. If this got super wet and someone plugged it in and their hands were wet, you could have a little bit of leakage going through there. So we're going to replace that cord too, even though I might save. It's one of those plug-in reusable plugs. Oh, it's stuck on there. So what we're going to do is replace the two values in this one can, this big whopper guy here, with two of these teeny weeny little guys here. We have two 47 microfarad caps. Yes, I know that 47 is higher than 30 microfarads. Doesn't matter if it's at or greater, unless you don't want to go nuts. Like you wouldn't put a 100 microfarad cap in there. But if it calls for 30 microfarads and you have 47s, it'd be fine. It might even actually be a little bit quieter. You never know. And then we're going to replace this cap with two of these. Not two of these. One of these. This is a 0.01 rated microfarad X2Y2 across the line cap. Important, because if this thing gets zapped by lightning, this thing will split open and eventually kill the filament string, versus something like this that could just fuse together all that closely watered up aluminum foil, and then you'd have just a direct AC set, a true hot chassis. Hence why this is inappropriate, both in terms of the type of capacitor and its value. But someone mentioned this earlier, and I totally agree with it. The fact that so many of these sets just still work is testament to the overall robustness of a lot of these components. So yes, there's a possibility of failure, but the fact that so many of them don't ultimately fail, pretty amazing, considering what it's made out of. Paraffin wax, aluminum foil, and cardboard. Well, I got kind of carried away. I meant to film this in chunks, but I wound up just recapping the set. There's not a whole lot going on here, but I'll explain. Here is our two new electrolytic capacitors, and you notice I don't try to get them that close to the base of the tubes. They get pretty warm. And I think these are 85 degrees Celsius rated caps. Here's our very, very important the ground cap for the other side of AC. That said, and I might have to go back and watch my own video, but I remember when I did the safety checks on the last one of these I did, it failed, and it's because you have the grid. I don't know why they did this in the mid to late 40s. You'd see a lot of manufacturers start to ground the grids of their tubes, the IF and RF tubes. So that goes to chassis ground. We got one there. We got one here. I remember what I had to do to make it pass safety and still play radio. I had to put a cap between there. See, that's going to ground. Between there and there. And here and here. If I remember correctly, there's actually a third ground. Indeed, I think it is that one. But if memory serves me correct, I think that one can stay and it'll still pass. I'll watch this tomorrow and remind myself what I had to do instead of tearing my hair out like I did last episode. Alright, it's testing time. That looks good and healthy. You get just a little bit of a surge on the pilot light. Then it settles down and eventually it'll come back up once all the filaments catch up. I clean the volume pot with a little juice. Watch it not work. I swear to God. I remember the last one I did of these, it took forever to warm up, so I'm wondering if this is the same deal. Uh-oh. We have lost... We have lost sound. Oh my God, this is so ridiculous. This is essentially what happened last time. It's like, we got this thing in the can. But nope, I just had a terrible thought. Let me unplug this. Did I solder that to the wrong side? Let me look up here. See if any of these guys have worked themselves loose. Alright, maybe our tube sockets came loose. Alright, well, something bad has happened. Either I have accidentally touched two leads together by bending things out of the way. I've done a miswire. That feels cold. What is that? Well, I probably wouldn't get that warm anyway. This is a... It's pretty cold. I don't know. Let me look for obvious mistakes as far as like wires touching each other and stuff like that. And it worked before, so I have a really hard time believing that any of the tubes are bad, but you just never know. You got to start with the easiest stuff first. Okay, I did find what the issue was, and it was what I thought it might have been. I mean, I didn't know exactly what it would be, but it sounded like something was touching. And I guess when I installed this cap, I'd like kind of gotten that resistor out of the way by bending it over, and it was in turn touching the center leg of that IF can. So that was killing my signal.
Welcome to Total Wine and More. I'm on call this weekend.
This is Sarah. How can I help?
Hi. Now is a perfect time to use it. Well, here are 2 words that could save you thousands. If you said that the
Company announced it would be bringing back.
So that's a good, healthy radio. Now, given the fact that I'm going to have to do a safety check, it probably means this will fail safety, but what time is it? I've been kind of on a marathon with radios lately. I did 2 yesterday and 1 the day before, and I'm now doing 1 now because we're having a big show coming up, so I'm getting kind of radio burned out just a tad. I think I want to do something that's mindless and easy, so I'm going to do the cosmetic work, which is clean this chassis, which looks like it's never been cleaned. It's completely coated, sugar-coated in dust bunnies. And then I'm going to go after this lovely case, because I'm sure that looks great when it's all cleaned up. Alright, so I cleaned up the chassis. A lot of people would kind of ask, why would you do that? I think it's because I believe in the old adage, respect your elders, and that to me applies to objects. So, 70-year-old piece of equipment is still in perfectly usable condition. Treat it well. So what we're going to do is we're going to oil the bearings in the front and the back of the tuning condenser, and then we're going to look for any pulleys. Looks like there's one here. I'm using a product called Triflow. You need just a little bit, and what that'll do is it'll make the feel of the tuning so much better. We're going to oil the shaft here. I don't want to get near the string because eventually via capillary action that will get into that bearing surface. So we're in good shape there. The last thing I'll do is like rub a little oil around the top edge there. It's interesting how people like to talk so loud on the phone. Alright, now it's safety testing time. I'm going to see what the amount of current's getting to this chassis. So I've got my multimeter set up on 2 volts AC. I got it fully warmed up. We're going to test both polarities. We got a little switch we're going to reverse the polarity on. Nothing on that, 0.008. Max threshold is 0.6 of a volt. Let's turn it over. This is probably the hot side. Well, we're just a smidge. Just a smidge over. I'm not sure. 8, not even 0.8, like 0.8 of a volt is, well, here it goes. It's going up a little bit more. 0.7. Okay, well, we have gone over the threshold by 0.1 of a volt, which we have our thresholds for a reason. We try to abide by them. And it's probably, I think it's that ground, that grid ground right there. If I remember the last time I did this, when I clipped that, the radio quit working, but then it passed safety. I can't remember. I'm going to clip just that one and see if it still works. That indeed was it. I clipped that one lead right there and it passes safety, but the audio is now really garbled. So what we need to do is add back a connection, but what we're going to do is add, just like start off with a 0.01 rated capacitor. And I do not advise what I'm about to do. Let's see here.
You can trust.
The very own VIO 910.
And on the iHeartRadio app. Geico presents Daily Affirmations. Repeat after me.
Try to find a more robust station. What channel is that on? Obviously I have no dial scale, so I don't know.
Este país y estamos atravesando momentos difíciles en la frontera sur, abogado, con esa triste noticia de 50 inmigrantes muertos el día de ayer dentro de un camión y han fallecido.
Yeah, that does it. Just a 0.01 cap put in there. Gets rid of that garbling noise. So let's solder that in and see if it still passes safety and the radio still sounds good. Welcome to the last day of working on the hot rodded RCA. And I did succeed last night in getting it to pass safety. Well, that's on the wrong side. Let's switch polarity. 0.414. That's a little under 0.2 under the max threshold, so we're good there. The last thing I'm going to do is install the oh-so-famous audio input where you can run your mobile phone or Bluetooth or whatever you want through the radio, but still have the ability to turn the radio signal on and off. So let's get to that. Meanwhile, there's a jet plane flying overhead as usual. Alright, so here is our audio input device. You've probably seen these in every single one of my videos unless you're new here, in which case there's plenty of other videos where I go into a lot of detail. But what this is essentially is an isolation transformer. It's just a wall wart. 120 volts in, primary, 12 volts out, secondary. These two leads are going to go to either side of the volume pot. There's 3 legs, top, bottom, and the center. And there's going to go, one is going to go to the incoming IF signal. The other is the bottom or the ground of the pot. Going in through the secondary winding is you have a pair of resistors, and your right and left channels are split there and they tie together to one end, and then your negative of your incoming audio goes here. We're going to glue this right here. The wires are going to snug themselves around that drum for the volume pot. Audio cables coming through. I'm going to use some glue to glue. I've got a knot here, but I also want to secure it in place so it doesn't get shoved around. By the way, thank you, Miles. He is one of our members, and he got some good quality audio cables. The ones I've been getting lately are crap, so I'm pretty happy about that. So we'll install that. The last thing I need to do is install a switch between this connection and the volume pot, which is that leg off of that IF transformer. And that way we'll be able to cut the radio signal off and on. We'll put a little switch back here. That way if someone wants to listen to music, they can. Want to listen on the radio, they turn the switch the other way, they get radio. Alright, so the system is installed. We have our isolation transformer right here. And as seen, our input is going in through there, through the secondary, and then the primary is going to either end of the volume pot. Now this is hard to film. I need like one of those stethoscope cameras that doctors use or something. That's little brown and black wires. That's the switch wire that disconnects the transformer to the volume pot, and I've got the switch mounted here. Radio signal's temporarily cut off, and I've got my Bluetooth mechanism running through the cord.
Honey boy, I could sure go for you.
Well, my heart beat a little bit quicker.
I love stupid old country songs like that. 7 Beers of the Wrong Women. That's a great song right there. That's just pure artistry. So it is just about done. It's about time to do a final reassembly and write this one up for the books. Alright, so she's done, and I gotta say, it's one of the slickest radios I think I've seen in a long time. I know it's not the original color or anything, but it works. I like the color combination. It doesn't sound too bad either.
Tell you what the hell it was supposed to mean, but it was a Monday, no a Tuesday, no Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then Saturday.
Google will get my algorithm and shut me down. Alright, there's the back end of it. And, you know, I had to, luckily I had a brand new, well, new in the box 12SA7, and I figured, let's put that sucker in there. So people actually see that, and then I found two glass tubes for the 12SK7 and 12SQ7, so it's just a little more glitzy in the back, even though I know this will be on a shelf queen and no one's going to look at it. But likewise, if someone wants to use it as a radio, you just turn the switch down in the back, and you get radio.
Investment. A few years. We're cutting off 17.
Anyway, after I finish this video, I'll let it sit for maybe a couple hours on, make sure that nothing's going to break down thermally. I want to make sure it's reliable before it gets put back into potentially regular everyday use. I've gone to shows and people will come by and say, I bought a radio from you 5 years ago and it's in the kitchen and I use it every day of the week. And I'm like, holy crap, I didn't expect that. So you want to make sure that your product is reliable and, more importantly, safe to use, which is why we did all that testing over there earlier. All right, guys, I kind of enjoyed working on this one. It's definitely unusual. It's an inspiring paint job. I hope that I can paint this well someday. All right, until next time a obsolete piece of electronic gear comes across my workbench, I'll see you guys next time. Adios.